All right, guys, Mr. Second Amendment again. If you're watching this, you just joined us, hopefully, from part one of the Second Amendment and you. And we're just going to keep rolling with the same points. Last time I was talking about, when I ended that video, actually just now, I was talking about how you had citizens in Europe, such as the Jews and whatnot, didn't have firearms, couldn't protect themselves. Some very serious consequences happened because of that. There are millions of people who are not alive today and don't have kin and generations following them because of that simple fact. So, very serious. Let's see. Next quote I'm going to lay on you. And here's another quote from the dark side. Political power grows out of the barrel of a gun. Do you know who said that? Some of you do. And if you do, props. If you don't, that is Chairman Mao Zedong. And that's actually from his 1964 Little Red Book. That's actually what's called. That's his little mini manifesto. And I regard it as absolute communist trash, but it's worth a read just to get the historical context of the situation and to help better understand communist China and what is going on with them, that's a whole other video. Moving on. Now, I'm going to lay a pretty serious quote on you, and this comes from a very revered source. And this is kind of my feelings exactly on the Second Amendment. So here it goes. Firearms stand next in importance to the Constitution itself. They are the American people's liberty's teeth and the keystone under independence. From the hour the Pilgrims landed to the present day, events, occurrences, and tendencies prove that to ensure peace, security, and happiness, the rifle and pistol are equally indispensable. The very atmosphere of firearms anywhere restrains evil interference. They deserve a place of honor with all that's good. Boom! Did you hear that? Did you see every point in that? And first of all, do you know who said that? That was General then President George Washington. Let me say that first sentence again. Firearms stand next in importance to the Constitution itself. The founding groundbreaking document of the founding of this country, made after the time of the Enlightenment, breaking away from Great Britain, a very unique founding, unlike anything seen before or after. The document that holds it all together, and the only thing that is more important, or second only important to that, is firearms. Why is that? Again, if you have firearms, you have security, you have the defense of peace and tranquility, and more importantly, the defense of life and freedom, liberty. That's what it is. Moving on. Now we need to talk about, let's move away. I want to move away from 18th century for a second. Let's move away from the origins. Let's talk about modern day. I see many politicians saying, oh, well, why do you need an AK-47? Why do you need an AR-15? Why do you need all these military-style, quote, assault rifles and assault weapons and whatnot? And my worst, just the most hated quote, I hate this, is when people say, oh, well, that belongs on the battlefield. It doesn't belong in your gun safe or on our streets or in our homes. It belongs on the battlefield. We shouldn't be able to own those types of guns. People, are you missing? Did you fall asleep in U.S. history? In that class, the day they taught U.S. history, did you fall asleep? Did you fall asleep at the wheel? Are you ignoring our founding fathers? Are you not reading your Federalist Papers? Are you not reading your Constitution? Are you not opening that history book? Nothing could be further from the truth. People, our battlefield, that battlefield you speak of, it hasn't always been in Europe. It hasn't always been a foreign battlefield in Japan or in the islands of the Pacific or Europe somewhere. That battlefield has sometimes been in our own country. War of 1812, big talking point. Foreign military came in. Not only did they come in and start to wreak havoc, they burned down our White House. Yeah, and if you didn't know that, newsflash, update, that's what happened. That's one historical event. And let's look at the 18th century reasons. Why did they own guns back then? Well, the reasons I can think of just right off the bat: communal defense, self-defense, hunting, or putting food on the table, national defense, and defense from government when there is no other alternative. When all peaceful means have been exhausted, the government is being tyrannical, enough is enough. And Our founding fathers exhausted, believe me. They did not, a group of militiamen and patriots, they did not want to go in battle against the world's most powerful military at the time, with the most powerful navy and regulars of army and whatnot. We did not want to fight that, believe me, but there was no other choice. It had come to that. So that's why they owned guns back then. And in today's world, we don't own, the Second Amendment is not around so we can go hunting or we can go shooting on the weekends. The Second Amendment is here so we can defend ourselves. Oh, well, Mr. Second Amendment, what are you talking about? We have the police, we have law enforcement, we have the government to protect us. Why do we need guns when we have cops and whatnot and the law enforcement? Are you kidding me? Are you really asking that right now? If someone's in your house and you don't know what they're up to, they possibly could be trying to harm you or do something to you. Are you going to seriously sit there with your phone and really rely on law enforcement? People, I'm going to tell you right now, law enforcement should never, ever be regarded as a QRF, quick reaction force. If you need it now, you are protecting yourself now, and you are in imminent danger or lethal or in defense of life. You are in a serious, dangerous scenario. And you want to pick up the phone and call someone who's 5 or 10 minutes away. I remember in high school I had to call 911, and I got put on hold. I'm not even joking. Granted, that was Los Angeles County, but at the same time, I don't want to be put on hold while somebody's getting killed. So, people in this modern day and age, there's a lot of people who seem to forget that we are our own source of protection. We are the first line of defense for our own selves. This should come as natural and common sense as it came for our founding fathers and as they profess through their quotes and their writings and their actions. But many people have forgotten or don't understand the fact that people, you are your own source of protection and self-defense. Are you seriously going to rely on law enforcement? They enforce the law. They're not bodyguards. Look at their job description. The courts have ruled time and time again. Their job is to enforce the law, gather information, give it to the judge and the court so they can make a decision later and make arrests if need be if a law has been broken. Their job is not to protect you. The courts have ruled time and time again, both civil and legal. It is not their job to protect you. Sure, in many cases, or in some cases, that is a byproduct of what they're actually doing, which is enforcing the law. And many cops will tell you. In fact, some of them will tell you, buy a gun. What are you doing without a gun? Their job is not to protect you. Their job is to enforce the law. And if someone's breaking the law by trying to harm you, yeah, they'll step in because the law is being broken, but it's not their job to protect you. They have no legal precedence to protect you. So, moving on. We had, basically in the history of this nation, let's talk about a legal standpoint. Let's move away from that for a little bit. Legally, the Supreme Court has really not touched the Second Amendment at all throughout the history of the United States, except for in very recent times. 2008, we had Heller versus D.C., which was, of course, Heller and some other people were going against the D.C. gun ban, which was basically, it was a handgun ban that lasted 30 years in Washington, the District of Columbia, got overturned, and there were some very, very important legal rulings that were handed down. Basically, that established for the first time in our history, just basically everyone had assumed, but no one had really said before, that yes, the Second Amendment implies an individual right to own firearms. Huge landmark legislation, or ruling, landmark ruling from the Supreme Court, which really disappointed the gun grabbers and the anti-gun lobby. A huge victory for us freedom lovers, basically patriots and people who look over the Constitution with a fine comb. Huge victory for us, because that means freedom is preserved. Again, I view countries' firearm ownership, I view that as the gauge or the barometer of how free they actually are. And if that ruling had gone south, and that was a one-person decision, that was one margin away, one person away from that going south. Anyway, moving on. 2010, we had Mcdonnell versus Chicago, which was also challenging and defeating the Chicago handgun ban, which was very similar to the DC handgun ban. And that was also pretty landmark as well. That set up the enumeration of the individual right to own guns, basically that set it up via the 10th Amendment to pertain to the states as well. So both of those rulings are extremely important to what we're talking about here. So basically it's been handled legally, but the Supreme Court has always gone back on itself and has been known to flip-flop sometimes throughout the decades. So just because those two decisions have been made, as very vital and encouraging as they are, doesn't mean we can let our guard down. It just means we gotta keep a vigilant eye over it. Moving on. Let's see. Everyone has the right to self-defense. That was an idea. I already talked about that. Basically, I'm going to move to personal thoughts. I'm going to move to, let's talk less away from, you can see I'm chunking away my thoughts here. Let's move less away from history, less away from the Constitution and the actual wording itself. Let's move towards what does Mr. Second Amendment think? First of all, I think everyone has a right to defend themselves, and I think everyone is their own first barrier of self-defense. Second of all, like I said, the police are not there to protect you, and you know what, they want to help people, a lot of them do, but it's not their official description, it is not their job to be your bodyguard. You are your own bodyguard, and that's number one. I also think, and this would be kind of a controversial idea, not a lot of people would understand it or possibly agree with it, but I think that everyone should own a gun for the most part. I think if you are competent, legally, mentally capable, and able, and you understand the responsibilities that come with owning a gun, I think that you should own a gun. I think you should. Now, if you look at the Bill of Rights with freedom of religion, self-expression, freedom of the press, all these kinds of rights that are given to us, and even including the 9th Amendment, which is the enumeration, which means even the ones that are not listed are rights that we have. If you look at that, you know what? It doesn't mean, maybe you do have the right to freedom of press, but it doesn't mean you're going to go out there and publish articles, just exercise the right just for the sake of exercising it. So that's not what I'm arguing. You don't have to go out there and just exercise this right just in the sake of exercising rights. There's some rights like that where, you have the right to do it, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're out there every day protesting or peaceably assembling or petitioning the government or whatnot. So, this is not something I think should be exercised just for the sake of exercising your rights. I think as being part of an educated and responsible American and citizen in this republic, I believe that you should own a firearm. And this branches into one of my favorite quotes from Guess the Person. Here it goes. By calling attention to a well-regulated militia, the security of the nation, and the right of each citizen to keep and bear arms, our founding fathers recognized the essentially civilian nature of our economy. Although it is extremely unlikely that the fears of governmental tyranny which gave rise to the Second Amendment will ever be a major danger to our nation, the amendment still remains an important declaration of our basic civilian-military relationships, in which every citizen must be ready to participate in the defense of his country. For that reason, I believe the Second Amendment will always be important. Guess who said that? 1960, then Senator John F. Kennedy said that. Notice how he said, and I agree with him on this, although it is extremely unlikely that the fears of governmental tyranny which gave rise to the Second Amendment will ever be a major danger to our nation, the amendment still remains an important declaration of our blah, 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 blah. So he basically says, and this is how I feel about it too, although it's pretty unlikely that our government is ever going to get to the point of tyranny to where there's no other option left but armed resistance, as much as I don't believe that's going to happen, I still believe we need the Second Amendment for that purpose. I believe that we need to have every American willing and able as possible to defend this country, whether that's on a foreign battlefield or here at home. And he also said that, the fears of governmental tyranny, that gave rise to the Second Amendment. That's the whole reason why it was created. So people on any side of the aisle, any politician, any person, gun grabber or not, pro-gun, anti-gun, look at that. The reason why we have the Second Amendment, in Kennedy's words and in my opinion, is not for hunting or shooting on the weekends or for competitive shooting. It's to defend this country from either within or without, outside or inside, doesn't matter, from internal or external forces. So, when you tell me I don't need an AK-47 to hunt deer, I'm going to tell you it's not for hunting deer. It's for dropping bodies. And they're going to look at me all strange. And I'm going to tell them, read your Constitution, look at your founding fathers, and understand what they're doing. Understand what the intent was. Now, I hope to God we never get to that point where there is no other option but armed resistance. And honestly, with the shift and when how our culture is going and everything, I don't see that being an actual possibility. But we should, like I said, we should be ever vigilant. We should be educated and armed Americans. We should. I want to protect. I love this country. I've sworn to defend the Constitution and its people, of the people of this country. I love it, and I don't want anything bad to happen to this country. So, harping on my original point, I think if you are willing and able to take on the responsibility of being a gun owner, and that's another video in itself, and you are mentally, legally, and physically capable and to have the responsibilities and whatnot, and you want to take that on, you want to be an educated, armed American, I think you absolutely should be armed. Absolutely. This is when people say power to the people, but they don't really know what they're talking about. If you say power to the people, you better own a gun before you say something like that. Oh, I don't own a gun. No, why would I do that? Well, then shut your face. Really? You're going to say something like power to the people, but you're not going to own a gun? That was the whole point. And you know what? As much as I didn't like Mao Zedong, going back to his quote, political power grows out of the barrel of a gun. Who is supposed to run this country? Who elects the officials that runs this country? This country is governed by the consent of the governed. By us, the people. We should have the political power, don't we? Maybe. But if no one's owning guns, we don't have the power. We don't have the ability to defend ourselves. We don't have it. So, that's something just to think about. I've gone over many points in this video. Thank you for watching. There's a lot of stuff I left out. There's a lot of stuff still to be discussed, and I'm hoping we can have discussion or debate or basically ideas and thought exchange in the comments. But again, this channel wouldn't be possible without you guys. Thank you so much for watching and staying in there for these videos. Like I said in the constitutional video in the description, I think I would be doing everybody a disservice if I was doing all these gun videos, but I wasn't talking about why we have firearms and why it's so important to maintain our right to firearms. I think me going around shooting things and showing videos of it, that's great and all, but I think I'd be basically, I wouldn't be serving you right, and I wouldn't be doing right by you if I didn't talk about why we have guns and why it's so important. So basically, again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and please discuss. Thank you.